News 4 Tracking Ian update.
Bagels, ramen, snacks.
All sounds very nice. Staff at Trident Medical Center hunkering down. Physicians and staff arrived with suitcases and pillows to sleep at the hospital until Sunday. And just like everyone in the Low Country, we're waiting for Ian to come. ABC News 4 has been working for you all evening, all day, morning. Joining us, Chief Meteorologist Dave Williams. Dave, what's the latest track?
And Tessa, the latest track is looking much better for us in the Low Country. Unfortunately for our friends up on the Grand Strand, things are not looking so good, but we've known all along that we're going to have a tropical storm, possibly a hurricane nearby, and that's what we're going to see. Traffic lights still at yellow. Tomorrow is a storm tracker day because we're going to have torrential downpours causing flooding. We're going to be looking at tropical storm force winds, could have some higher gusts, and the flash flooding potential will be very high, especially around high tide on Friday morning. Coastal impacts, we've already had beach erosion, and the combination of high pressure parked off to our north and Ian approaching from the south all week long has created quite a pressure gradient force, and that's been pushing wind back toward the coast and piling up water along the offshore waters. That's been pushed inland with high tide earlier today. That's going to get pushed with high tide tomorrow morning, and we're going to put heavy rainfall on top of that, so flooding is likely. We are under a hurricane warning. Some places may actually be taken out of this south of Charleston. I'm thinking maybe Colleton County and Beaufort County, looking more so like we're going to see a landfall north of Charleston. We do have a tropical storm warning inland, and we're going to keep those tropical storm warnings, and those might transition to tropical storm warnings Beaufort and coastal Colleton, because we're all going to see tropical storm force winds. We're all going to see heavy rainfall, but the worst impacts off to our north. As far as the surge warning is there, but the surge is going to be north of where the center makes landfall. That's farther north. So the surge threat through Charleston, coastal Colleton, and Beaufort County, very, very low. What we're looking at is that threat of the pressure gradient force water that's been sitting off the coast pushing inland with high tide tomorrow, and the heavy rain coming in on top of it. There is that rain. That rain is moderate to heavy, and the heaviest rain off the coast right now, that will start to push inland. There's Ian down here. As we take a look at the current coordinates from the storm, 80-mile-per-hour winds. We've got that storm off of Florida right now. And watch this track. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe a few miles an hour stronger. Category 1 hurricane. Watch this. The Charleston Harbor is on the south side of the cone. It's looking like that landfall is going to be a little farther north than South Carolina, limiting the bad impacts through the Low Country and shifting those, unfortunately, to our neighbors to the north up near the Grand Strand. So here's what we've got through the evening. We've seen the rain, and we're going to keep that rain picking up overnight tonight along with the gusty winds. We'll take a more in-depth look at Ian and how the rest of the forecast is shaping up. That's just a few minutes away.
Thanks, Dave. And be sure to keep your ABC News 4 weather app alerts on. You'll get instant notifications of watches and warnings as we weather this storm together. Well, parts of the Low Country already seeing the impact of Ian. Take a look at this tweet from Charleston County Sheriff's Office. Deputies spotted fallen street lamps near Hollywood on Highway 165 near Highway 162. They say the lights are not blocking traffic, but they're reminding drivers to be careful if you are out on the roads tonight. From IOP to the edge of America, working for you tonight, ABC News 4's Conley Grayson is at Folly Beach. And Conley, how are conditions at this hour?
Hey Tessa, so we're currently on Folly Beach. As you can see, this rain just in the last 5 minutes really started coming down. Now I'm going to take you through a timeline starting now, working backwards. As we can see right here, I'm going to walk a little bit closer to the water, not to the water, just a little bit closer. You can see this drop off right here is actually where the waves are coming up to. Just 45 minutes ago, there was about 5 to 10 feet of shells. No waves were hitting that at that point. If that shows you how much further these waves are coming up in a time period. Now, even just 5 hours ago, we had about 20 feet of shells. And so it's just continually coming closer and closer. If we take a look this way, we can see right now I'm not feeling the wind as much as we have been. But you can still see these palm trees really moving. This wind is coming in at an angle. It's moving a little bit south, so it's hitting the right side of my face. At the pier, you can see the waves underneath are actually hitting the bottom of it. They are just really toppling in right now. These are the biggest waves we have seen all day. Now, construction is still on top of the bridge. We don't have much light, so you can't see exactly what is going on under the bridge, but hopefully we've got a good zoom and enough lights where you can see those crashes. Now, earlier, if you missed it, we had some surfers out in the water. We had some people collecting those shells. Obviously, now with this weather, those surfers are gone, and those people trying to find shells are also gone. We will continue to update you here at Folly Beach throughout the night and during the storm tomorrow. Working for you, Conley Grayson, ABC News 4.
Thanks, Conley. Stay safe. Well, continuing coverage as the rain is starting to pick up downtown Charleston. Soon may start to flood. That's where we find our Ann Emerson. Ann, is the Holy City ready for the heavy rain?
Well, Tessa, I certainly am getting that feeling from the emergency management systems that are in place. They have been working hard. Now, I just want you to show you a little bit of what it's like down here. Like you said, the rain is really starting to pick up. We're kind of in one of those bands right now. It's kind of moving slantwise, the rain is and the wind is. And if I look just behind me, you can sort of see we've been watching this water starting to accumulate. Now, it doesn't feel like a whole lot more water than we normally see on just a really rainy day in Charleston, but that is rain that we're going to be keeping an eye on. Water accumulation we're keeping an eye on, because the seawall right here is very, very important as far as trying to keep the high tides at bay, as it were. Now, we know that this isn't the highest tide we're going to see during Ian's approach to us, but it is one of the first ones, and we're expecting this high tide in the next half an hour or so. Now, we talked to the Emergency Management Directorate about how he's working in coordination with the other agencies right now. This is what he had to say.
Now we are finalizing our preparations for tomorrow, making sure that we've got all of our resources in place, making sure that we've coordinated with all of our partners, state and regional, just to ensure that we have everything we possibly need to keep the people of Charleston safe.
It's good to know, because we are absolutely preparing right now for Ian to come toward the low country. So we're definitely starting to feel it a little bit more tonight. Now, one of the areas, this is an important area out here on East Bay, because this is an area that notoriously does flood. Now, we're literally at Water Street. Water Street is a street that we've done stories just in the past week. We've talked to homeowners who have raised up their floor so that they aren't going to get inundated with those flood waters. And next door, they even have another mitigation factor with another homeowner who is bringing a European way of trying to mitigate the floods from Venice. So we know that this is an area that takes a brunt of storms, and we are going to be watching this very closely. So this might be able to give us a little bit of an indication of what it's going to be like for them tomorrow, and we can see how these mitigation factors are working. I'm working for you tonight in downtown Charleston. I'm Ann Emerson. Back to you in the studio, Tessa.
And well, stay with us. We'll continue our coverage as we continue to track Ian tonight. As we go to break, there's a live look at Myrtle Beach.
This is an ABC News 4 Tracking Ian update.
Things are looking better here in the low country, and that's because the landfall from Ian looks like it's going to be north of the low country, possibly northern Charleston County, more so likely into Georgetown County, but even more likely headed up toward Horry County. So we're going to get tropical storm conditions. We've already gotten tropical storm conditions. We've seen those winds gusting over 39 miles an hour. That's tropical storm force. As far as hurricane force, I really don't see it. Maybe out over the ocean. As far as the storm surge, I don't see it because our winds will be offshore with the storm passing by offshore. And as far as our rain threat, we're going to get heavy rain. That's always been the biggest impact that I've been focused on, and we're going to see that. Now, there could be some power outages because see this dead tree that got blown over today? Stephen McCabe sent this in to us from North Charleston. There will be branches blown down, and that could cause some power outages if they come down on power lines. The big threat is going to be the water, and it's going to be mainly from the rain and our high tide tomorrow morning. Now, it's not storm surge. What we're going to get is all the water that's been piling up close to the coast all week long because of high pressure to the north and Ian approaching from the south. That's the pressure gradient force that has been pushing that water back toward the coast. That's going to cause the flooding along with high tide tomorrow morning around 11:41 and the heavy rain coming in on top of that. Now, before 8 o'clock in the morning right now, steady rain and gusty winds. Before noon tomorrow, downpours, tropical downpours, flooding likely during this time, and tropical storm force wind gusts. Keep in mind that high tide right around noon. Downtown Charleston likely going to see flash flood warnings. Heavy rain before 4 p.m. with those wind gusts. Flash flooding could continue, but then things will end very sharply late in the afternoon, headed toward the evening before 8 p.m. That rain ends. The winds are offshore. That pushes the water out into the ocean. Things will improve very, very quickly later Friday. 3 to 6 inches of rain, no matter where you are. That does vary by neighborhood to neighborhood. Some spots a little more, some spots a little less. Wind gusts 55 to 65 miles per hour, especially on the beaches and especially north of Charleston. And that could cause some tree branches to be blown down. Tornado threat very isolated north of the center of the storm, mainly northern Charleston County, but more so up toward Georgetown, Horry County, and into North Carolina. The rain and coastal flooding both going to be an issue, especially around that high tide cycle tomorrow morning. Out into the tropics, we have an area that has formed here, and it's got a 40% chance of tropical development, and 11 is done. Tropical depression 11. Here is Ian, and it's not very organized as far as a tropical system. Notice that flare up of thunderstorms right around the center, so it does still have some convection with it, but it's a shell of what it was as it hit Florida. Really feel for our neighbors to the south in Florida. They got hit by a major Category 4 hurricane, almost Category 5. What we're watching for, major flooding around high tide tomorrow morning. And it's because of that water that's been piling up along the coast for the last several days. It's going to come inland with that high tide tomorrow, washed in with the tide and the heavy rain on top of that. That's going to cause our major flooding. Like we saw, the winds will be offshore as Ian blows by. See that? Offshore winds. And that's going to keep the water away from us as far as the surge. Here are your wind gusts outside right now. 25 to 35 mile an hour wind gusts, and we've seen those wind gusts up over 40 miles an hour. In fact, we saw a wind gust out in a buoy even higher than that. Right in downtown Charleston today, because of that water that piled up with the pressure gradient force, 7.65 foot storm or 7.65 foot flooding or tide gauge there, and that did cause some moderate flooding. Now here at our offshore Capers buoy, 61 mile per hour wind gust. A look at what we've got going on right now with our satellite and radar. That rain is being pushed inland all the way back to 95. This is going to continue to spread inland into the day tomorrow as our storm approaches from the south and eventually heads inland late tomorrow afternoon, headed toward the evening. There it is. Doesn't really look like a tropical system right now. Looks more like a regular low pressure center, a regular storm like we would see, because it's making that transition as it heads into the fall air. Heavy rain on the west side of the storm, and that's where we're going to be the entire time. The storm, well, it's gotten a little closer now. It's within about 200 miles of us. There is Ian just off the coast of Florida and Georgia, right along the Florida-Georgia line there. And that heavy rain will continue to transition inland overnight tonight. There it is at midnight tonight. The heavy rain wind forward in time, and by 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, that heavy rain is working its way inland. We'll continue to see a weak hurricane, and as that pushes inland, it's going to become a tropical storm very quickly. 4 p.m. tomorrow, we could be done with the rain here in the low country as that storm tracks off to our north. We'll clear things out by Saturday morning, be looking at lots of sunshine, and headed through the weekend. It looks like a few clouds in the afternoon, and then headed toward your Sunday, things looking pretty good too. So overnight tonight, what you need to expect, it's going to be rainy, it's going to be windy. You'll hear those tree branches being blown around, and there will be some localized flooding, so best to stay indoors throughout the evening. 62 inland, 69 on the beaches. Then as we go into the day tomorrow, torrential downpours. It's going to be windy, flash flooding likely, highs in the upper 60s to right around 70, and look at those winds, 40 to 55 miles an hour, higher gusts, especially on the coast. Here's what we have for you. Tomorrow is a storm tracker day with our tropical storm conditions. And then as we go into the weekend, we'll see those highs in the lower 80s. Next week, looking like pretty good fall weather other than a couple sprinkles possible on Monday.
Thanks, Dave. And waves are really kicking up on the Isle of Palms as Ian gets closer to our coast. Our Kennedy Buck joins us now with the latest out there. Kennedy?
Hey Tessa, so everyone here at Isle of Palms is just waiting and watching for the worst to come. And even as I've been standing here, just like you said, this wind is really starting to pick up. And earlier today, I saw some people kind of loading up their boats to kind of head out of the island, while others were kind of more drawn to watch the waters. As Tropical Storm Ian makes its way to the Low Country, some took it as a change to try new things. Tim Johnson came out to fly a kite, but he needed an extra hand.
I'll give you a nod and you just toss it. You can't do as much with it because of how strong it is, but I'd never tried to fly it in a wind like this.
Now on Sullivan's Island, restaurant owners will continue serving customers.
Getting ready, bringing in enough beer, enough food, stuff like that. We're ready. I did board the front windows just in case.
Dunleavy's will be open tomorrow midday. And even though the storm will make the most impact tomorrow, Mar isn't worried about business slowing down.
We have a reputation for being open, one of the last bars open or whatever, so they know we're going to be open.
Others will be a bit more cautious.
Making sure that there aren't things that'll fly away or fly into a neighbor's yard or hurt anyone, and making sure that we're taking some precautions just in case the power goes out or anything else were to happen. So extra groceries too.
Now, if you realize you forgot a snack, some milk, or even a bottle of wine, Harris Teeter here at IOP will be open tomorrow, but hours may change depending on the storm. Working for you at IOP, Kennedy Buck, ABC News 4.
Thank you, Kennedy. Meanwhile, down in Florida, it's Governor DeSantis who spoke about the devastation left behind there. He says they expect there to be deaths, but would not confirm any numbers. He also says many homes were washed away and infrastructure destroyed. Now, back here tomorrow morning, Somerville Town Council will hold a virtual emergency meeting at 9:30. It will be live streamed on the town's website. On the agenda, a temporary state of emergency declaration ahead of Hurricane Ian. That meeting will also cover an amendment to the town's tax increment pledge. More to come on ABC News 4 at 11. We meet this month's Jefferson Award winner. Find out how she is helping others through her own journey of recovery.
The Jefferson Awards are sponsored by Holy City Heating and Air.
There are people who walk the walk, and there are people who walk the talk. Pastor Elfrida Dees bounced back from addiction and now leads others to a life filled with hope, wholeness, and stability. Her ministry, built on the belief that if she can help somebody along her life's journey, her living will not have been in vain. And that's what makes her September's Jefferson Award winner. This is Grace House. You'll find positive affirmations in every room, thoughtful reminders to the people who live here. Pastor Elfrida Dees was once in their shoes. Her laugh,
I can do that!
a stark contrast to what her life was once like.
I would have never dreamed I would have ever got caught. I thought I was having fun, the average drinking at, hanging out with the party crowd, and you know, the 70s, the love child era, smoking weed and all that stuff was sort of like a norm.
Until things took a turn.
And I continued to progress until it just took me down a spiral that I never would imagine for myself. I came from a great family. There was no dysfunctions. I was educated.
She was all those things, yet
by the end of my road, I was on the corner begging for change. Yeah.
That corner,
King and Hughie Street,
in downtown Charleston.
I used to call that my office.
An encounter blocks from her former job at the Post and Courier.
And I can still remember it like it was yesterday. He said, the streets got her.
A wake-up call.
And it was that guilt and that shame that I had thrown away everything. You know, that was not the life that I expected for myself.
And that was enough for the former journalist to check into rehab. But one more shadow of pain lingered. A son lost to crib death.
And I was moving back from Columbia to care for my mom and dad. And I had to pass the graveyard where my son was buried. And I just started to cry and wail to God. And I was like, God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I didn't do right by you. And my son had to die. And it was almost audible, Tessa. It was like, listen, would you stop crying about that son? I've got him. I've got him. You just move on with your life. You were not equipped to take care of him. I got him. But I bring to you many sons.
Those many sons would come in the form of men, homeless, addicted. Pastor Elfrida wrote her plan, divinely dictated, to birth Bounce Back Incorporated. She would not treat the men like numbers. They would be given basic instructions to be able to get back on their feet.
And God sent a homeless plumber, a homeless carpenter, a homeless electrician.
A dilapidated building in North Charleston transformed into Bounce Back's men's campus. And 4 years later, in 2018, Walking Women's Welfare was founded. The blueprint, the same.
We bridged that gap. You can stay here until the paperwork goes through. It's affordable. You can still save. And our motto is, we don't let anything happen until the miracle happens, because we don't want them to go back to homelessness.
4 houses later, Pastor Elfrida is serving a total of 28 men and women, their family.
And that's what we try to nurture in here. We can't mandate love, but we try to get you to see that, listen, everybody here is suffering from something. Be understanding.
And no one understands that more than Pastor Elfrida Dees. The Jefferson Awards honor those who find the time to honor others with their service. If you know of a deserving individual who's multiplying good in their community, I want to know. Email me at taspencer@sbgtv.com. But when we come back, Dave Williams will give us another look at tonight's weather, what's in store overnight.
This is an ABC News 4 Tracking Ian update.
And as we come back on air tonight, Dave, we just got word the president has approved an emergency declaration for South Carolina ahead of Ian. So how far away is that storm now?
It's still about 150 to 200 miles away, so it's quite a distance away, but it's going to close that distance very quickly into the day Friday, and it's going to make landfall on the coast of South Carolina. The better news for us is that it's looking like that landfall is going to be a little farther to the north in South Carolina. I've been watching that trend for the last couple of days, and I kept saying it's down here near Savannah. It's working up toward the Charleston and Colleton County coast. It's working up toward Georgetown. That's about where it is now, and that might continue even farther north into the day tomorrow. So most of the low country will be on the back side of this storm. That eliminates the storm surge because the winds will be offshore, pushing the ocean away. So the storm surge, not an issue at all for most of us. That's going to be north of the center of the storm. And where that makes landfall, that's where that surge comes inland. We are going to see higher than normal high tides, especially around that morning high tide tomorrow. Add heavy rain on top of that, and that's where we're going to see the flooding. Coastal flooding. In addition to that, we're going to probably see flash flooding in downtown Charleston. Time frame on that, about 10 in the morning till about 2 in the afternoon. That's why tomorrow's a storm tracker day. Not only that, we're also going to see some tree branches blown down with tropical storm force winds. This storm, even though it doesn't make landfall here, close enough to give us those tropical storm conditions into our Friday. Then Saturday and Sunday, things looking much better. And then next week, look at this, a nice little slice of fall for you, Tessa.
All right, looking forward to that most definitely. Thanks, Dave. Be sure to stay with us throughout our coverage of Hurricane Ian on air and online. We'll break in with weather updates. Keep you safe. Have a blessed one.